Awesome. Okay. So what I want to talk about, I did a webinar on this, I want to say last month before, anyway, recently, about this with our Blueprints resident UX and UI people. They've been doing some seminars, but they brought me in because they wanted to talk about specifically reporting. So it's like the UX in Power BI is really kind of obviously the space I live in. And so a lot of times there's confusion between like UI and UX. So I wanted to kind of, you know, show how they're related, like the user experience and the user interface are interrelated. So, but the user experience justifies the user interface decisions. And I'll get into that in a minute. But the goal for the user interface is to make it functional and appealing, but how you do that depends on how the user is going to use it, and that's that user experience. So you get what the user wants out of the report, and you use that to build the user interface. And especially with like Power BI, there's so many options to, not just, with charting, you can do different types of charts, but like how if they're going to be used on a mobile, you have the mobile views, you have embedded, you have, your paginated reports, all those kind of things, all those considerations, go into play when you're building a report. So the more you can get information about what the user is expecting and what the user is wanting from that data, you can make informed decisions on those user interface elements as you're creating these reports. So that's kind of the very quick high level on the user experience. And so this leads to user-centered design. And this is key when I create any of my reports, especially, reports for the client. For me, I'm the user. I get to make all the decisions. It's very exciting. But when I'm working with clients, of course, I have to find out it's not about me anymore. It's about what they want. And so that's really key, because if you don't ask these questions, you already have an assumption on what these answers are when you're creating your reports. And if those assumptions are wrong, you're going to set yourself up for rework later. So it's best to kind of get these are some of the really kind of key questions I ask. And I'm going to go through them and then explain why. So what actions they want to take from the report. This one I think is really key. Like, do they want to just kind of see it and then, wander away? Do they want to get into the details? Do they want to be able to email someone? Maybe they want to find out where they're not doing well, and then they're going to want to click a button that'll email that person and be like, hey, what's up? Let's schedule a meeting, let's talk. So they want to know, who to contact. Like, so what are they wanting from this? What is the end goal of this report? What is the point, really? What type of charts they get insights from? Pie charts get a lot of love, from all kinds of stuff. So some really cool memes. I should have added that to my slide deck anyway. But a lot of times they have maybe industry standards, or they'll have different ways that they've always kind of reported this data. Maybe they see it as a line chart, maybe it's always an area chart, and that's what the board is used to seeing. That's what they're used to seeing. That's what, when they share this with other industry peers, that's what they're looking for. So it's really important to get that. A big one of that was, I've been working with a lot of oil and gas companies, and I'm very new to oil and gas. Unlike most of my coworkers here in South Central, they swear they've all worked in oil and gas, but I was very new to it. And so, one of the big key ones is like, the colors on the charts. Oil is in green and gas is in red. And I always want to put oil in black because in my brain, that's how that makes sense. So kind of getting those. And honestly, as soon as you make an assumption and put it out there, and that kind of leads to my next point, but that this is an iterative process. And that Power BI is great because you can put something out, put it in front of the client, like, hey, how do you think about this? And they're like, I hate this, this, and this, and please change this, this, and this. And so they were like, so we changed that to green. Every single time I made it black. But, and find out, what they're using now. Obviously, they're doing something to get this information now. So find their Excel file. Are they just drawing it in PowerPoint? However, they're getting it now. And that's really important. And that leads to how they're sharing it with others. So are they really getting this numbers and then putting it into a PowerPoint manually and then sharing it with their stakeholders? I've seen this happen Just even internally with our kind of DevOps user stories for our stand-ups, I was watching the PM, literally copy the data from DevOps with the user stories and the story points and a status. And I'm like, I can make Power BI look exactly like that PowerPoint slide. And then all you have to do is copy it and, just do a screenshot, toss it up into PowerPoint. It can even export into a PowerPoint, but then you just have to play with the filters and get it ready. So if you know that up front, they're going to simply put into a PowerPoint, you can actually make it look exactly like a PowerPoint, and then they could just export it. So they don't have to do that step anymore. So it's all about making that experience faster, making it helpful. The whole point of Power BI is to help the user get the most out of their data. And so these are what these questions are about. How much time do they spend looking at the report? Do they need to know really quickly? Like they're just gonna, in the morning, they're gonna look on their phone, maybe on the mobile view, and like, okay, cool, we're doing great. Move on with my day. Or, oh my gosh, everything's broken. And it kind of sets the tone for the day. Or are they an analyst who's going to come in here and they're going to look at the data and they're going to drill through and they're going to try to get down to all of the nitty gritty details. Maybe they need to kind of watch certain things. So how much time do they spend looking at their reports is important, because that's kind of, a lot of times I like to layer my reports. So you'll have, kind of bubbled up and then you can kind of drill through. And then this one really is about, what do I need to surface fastest? So if I ask like, how much time do you spend right now? But what are you trying to get at? Maybe we can surface that faster and decrease that time. How do they use the report? So typically, the assumption is they're at a computer, at a desk, typing away. They've got the nice big screen. Maybe they got a big screen. Maybe they got a laptop. So those are important for how much, maybe I'll make it really big font size if it's on a really big screen and they're going to just set up on a projector and have it sit there and show data all day. Or, are they using their mobile? Are they using iPad? Are they walking around a store? Are they a manager? Are they out in the field? Are they in a car? I mean, so those information, like where they want to use it. And now you got the spatial stuff coming up. So I'm going to bring a whole new element to this question. Okay, where do you want the report to live? And now where do you want it to display in the real world? So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but it'll be kind of neat. Because then we can set up mobile views. Power BI is very fast on mobile, no matter what it's doing. And then we can kind of set it up that way. And then the last two I put in yellow. And the reason I did this is because this is more about finding, so the data also has a story it wants to tell. It's trying in its large tables, and we're going to help surface that story. And so these are kind of, they're also user centric, but like more about the data. So a lot of times the user will have an idea of what their data is actually saying. They'll be like, oh, we are, 75% doing this. Like that's just their feeling from what they've seen, just talking with people, looking at some other queries. And so it's really helpful to know what their initial thoughts are, because that can lead to those questions. It's a delicate conversation sometimes, but it's a good conversation to have. Like, we're actually showing in the data it's 50%. Is there something wrong with the data? Is it not capturing everything? So that can kind of lead to a data quality conversation, or just, resetting those expectations. And maybe there's some business logic that I was not aware of when I'm crunching that data together, making that business kind of rule, oh, well, we exclude X, Y, and Z because we don't care about those things. And then when I exclude them, then okay, it's now close to the kind of number they're looking for. And what does the data mean to their business? So this one's really critical, because it also leads to which data points are kind of driving factors in their business and which ones are not. So, maybe trying to think of a good example, but, all these rows of data mean something to the business. It's something that's happened or something that's going to happen or event. So understanding what those events are and how they interact is really important when creating a report. Okay, so the user-centric design, really important. The report is for them. So it's really important to understand the users that are going to be using the report. So then that leads to kind of my next one about storytelling. So storytelling is a good user experience. And there's, I was going to show, I was going to put in the slide, but I ran out of time. But there's a site, Storytelling with Data, and she has a lot of examples of really great ways where she's taken a chart and kind of like shaped it like a story. So not only she's found the point that's interesting and then explaining it, and then maybe taking a step further. And so this is like surface quickly the insights. So here I have, we missed our sales target, right? That needs to be really visible. That needs to be one of the first things they see on that report. Like, okay, we have a problem here. And answer what or where it went wrong. So we say, well, Australia missed the target in bike sales. So we can have that information kind of highlighted somewhere. Providing context. I think providing context is important for any measure in any report, to be honest. How is it compared? How is that trending over time? How is it doing comparatively with other peers? That kind of stuff. So a big example of that, of course, is like when you see COVID dashboards with the population, you have to normalize the data. Otherwise, countries with large populations look like they're huge. Whereas, if we normalize it, they might not have as big outbreak as a smaller country. And so Australia's bike sales have been trending down, everyone else is trending up. So provide a path for next steps. So what are we going to do next? So in the report we can show that who the sales manager is, and then they can go ahead and follow up with the sales manager and find out what's going on. So it's taking that storytelling is leading the user to the action. So we want to create actionable insights, and storytelling is a way to lead the user there. Okay, so that is actually all of my slides. I think that's the most slides I've ever done. But what I wanted to show you was some examples. So this is my site, but I wanted to show you, so this is the one I have up right now on LinkedIn for the Maven Analytics Data Challenge for the toys in Mexico. So what I did down here is I was looking at this data, and it had like kind of current inventory. And so I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to take that to the next step and find out when our current inventory would be exhausted. So that's what I've done here. And so I pushed it out and said, in 2 weeks across all our stores, 2 products are going to be completely unavailable. And then so I have in here, I'm trying to lead the user. So I'm explaining what I'm doing. Those out of stock projections. How am I doing it? I'm taking the average of the last 3 months and then simply dividing our current stock into that to get kind of how many months forward it will last. Now I'm doing that aggregated at the whole level, and I can do that at an individual store. So then I can kind of get into just this store, and eventually it will update. There you go. So I can see in this store, 6 products are actually going to be completely out of stock in a week. And now if I want to, I can click here and I can see what those products are. Eventually. My computer is like having a hard time because I have my other profile running in the background. So I can tell you what those products are. I can tell you what percentage of, this is looking at units sold, what percentage of units sold these ones comprise in the last 2 years. We can kind of see the trend line now, just those 6 products. And I can see where the profitability lies. So, well, we're looking at, okay, we need to stock some of these. Okay, barrelless slime looks like it's a popular one. But I can see over here, and barrelless slime is also one of our most profitable products. So we should probably stock that one first. So that's kind of leading the user through that story and kind of giving them a way to make those decisions in real time. And here we can see that, we're in forecast to be trending up in demand for barrelless slime. And if you look down here, we can say, okay, well, this little red dot, okay, dino eggs, it looks like it's kind of decreasing in popularity anyway. We don't make a whole lot of money off it, so maybe we just won't restock that one. So that's kind of the idea here. What else is going to show? Oh, so I have a lot of tooltips because
hey Zoe, one question on that. Yeah, the tooltips are awesome. Oh, I was going to ask about, okay, so if on that bubble chart, if you kind of included all the products, or did you exclude some in the middle?
Nope. I have them of all the products here.
Okay, nice.
Yep. So there's only like, I think there's, if you look at the inventory here, there's 35 available products across most of the stores and for the choices. So 35 is not too bad. If it's like hundreds, probably need to come up with some other scenario here. Segment it is some way. But 35 is not too difficult. So you can kind of get in, color buds. They make the most money off of Jenga. So,
Nice.
but it's also trending down. Apparently everyone already has Jenga. So you have to wait a little bit for everyone to lose all their pieces. So, and you can kind of, so this is kind of give you that detail. So here I have units sold, and I can actually go over and flip the whole report to instead look at units sold to look at net sales, cost, gross sales, orders. It is really slow. I'm really sorry. I should have done on the published version. And you'll notice this is that what Brent, you were showing earlier, those, I just lost the word, the what's it, smart narrative. This is a smart narrative. So it created these two. I deleted the rest. I didn't think they were useful, but it created these two and I kept them. So which location made up what of the selected measure here, and I modified it to show what the selected measure was. Excuse me. And then which one had the highest, and which one had the highest profit margin. So I tried to keep a pulse on the profit margin as much as possible in all of these reports, because that's really the kind of context I want to put everything in, is that profit margin, because that's what's important for the business. And if I was an executive looking at this report, I'd be like, that's great, but do we make money with this product? We don't want to sell things at a loss. And you'll see overall in this data, everything's trending up, but our profit margin's been trending down. So we probably want to, so I think that was a really interesting one to highlight. Here I concluded for each of the cities, they have multiple stores at different locations. So we have like the downtown, residential, airport. I wanted to put little icons on the axis. And so I remembered that you can do that with Unicar. So these are all just little text, calculated columns, and I included little Unicar characters, and they work well on out-of-box slicers. This is not a chiclet slicer. This is an out-of-box slicer. And so you can kind of have that kind of visually represented instead of having to read the word each time. I also included, so in helping the user understand this report, hold on, I have to do it this way. Hold on. My report is struggling on my computer today. Oops, there it goes. Okay, so I included this overlay page. This is just a big button. That's all it is. It's a big button with the fill with the image. I took a screenshot of my report. I marked it up in Snagit, and then I erased my screenshot behind the annotations to make it transparent. So you'll notice that the report is actually live. You can see it live behind these annotations. And then because it's a button, I can just click anywhere on this page to make it go away, which I thought was a really important fact, because I don't want to have my users spend an hour trying to figure out where the X button was. They're like, so this is great, make it go away. I also made it white instead of, I wanted to make it black, but I missed a couple spots when I was erasing. So it didn't show up on the white, but it did show up on the black. And so it kind of gives you that, the measured context, and give them those, they call it just in time learning, or, keeping it where it's needed. I don't have to go elsewhere to find out information about this report. I can see it on the report itself, and that makes for a better user experience. Unless you use it in desktop, because then you have to take control. I also wanted, I spent a lot of time on the tooltips. So here's this one. I also included here for each of the stores, kind of incorporating that forecast information. And also, I think the forecast is here. And then over here, it'll break it down. So you see 2 stores, 2 products are going to go out of stock in multiple stores of all of our stores. But individually, which ones are most at risk in next week of losing products, this tooltip will show you that information. So I didn't have to drill through I just wanted to kind of really easily surface information. And then you can kind of look at that information there. What I also wanted to show was the iterative process that this is. So here is my duplicates over here are some early versions of this report. As I was, this is like one of my very first things, I was like using the numeric templates, playing around. I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't, so I was down here, I was feeling pretty good about all this stuff. But this stuff I wasn't sure about. And then my second version, as I was going along, I incorporated that, the unicar, and I have that chart here, and I've incorporated that slicer here. I've taken it out of the top before, and you see I had the city up top here in a slicer. I think before I also had location up there in a slicer, and I decided it was too far away from where I wanted it to be used. Oh, I didn't include, I had it up there for a while, but I didn't have a copy of that. But I wanted to kind of, as I thought about it and I thought about the user experience, I have to go find the slicer. And I was like, well, let's put it closer to the report that the chart that it actually matters. So they don't have to go hunting for things. So I only have two. I should have done a lot more, but I only have two. So.
Hey, Zoe, while you're there, would you mind showing kind of how that unicar function works? Because that's a really neat feature. I know people would use more if they, but a lot of people, I mean, obviously we don't think about unicar a lot. We should think about it more.
You gotta go
Where's
back
it
to your
coming from?
DOS days, okay? In your
Yeah,
ASCII
exactly.
days to know your unicars. Yeah, so here, oh my gosh, now I have to figure out how to.
Well, and if you know of any good websites, so just I can, while you look it up there, just
There
unicar,
is
go ahead,
one
yeah.
website that's like unicar tables, and I had to scroll forever. And there's a lot of ads on that site, but eventually I found the icons I wanted. But yeah, it was a little bit annoying
Yeah.
because there's like a lot of unicar. They eventually I found they did have on that site a little menu where I could jump down to like emojis and stuff, and then my life was a bit easier. But until I got there, I almost abandoned the whole process.
Yeah, I wish that, yeah, I would know. I would love to find a good PDF or something, but this refers to like Unicode. So it's a way of encoding characters. And so for a long time in history of computers, we had because bit sizes were smaller. You've heard about 64-bit, 32-bit, like you could only have so many characters. And so now that things are more 64-bit oriented, there's this Unicode standard. There's all kinds of implementations, but it's trying to be every character from every language and every culture, but also a whole bunch of symbols and emojis and all kinds of stuff that you can plug in, and most computers today can understand it. Mobile devices, they'll display that icon somehow, so anyway.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
sometimes
please.
it
Yeah.
does differ from one operating system to another, which is so sometimes you might want to test these out. I've gotten into small arguments on, mobile games of people using Android versus iPhone, what the icon looks like, because they do look different. And sometimes it won't come through. So if you have, especially, and that is a consideration, if you have Mac users who are using your reports, you need to go and change your fonts from Calibri because they don't have that out of the box, and it looks like Times New Roman. It looks terrible. So those are those experiences where you're using those reports. If you're using a Mac to view reports, and that's a lot of your base, it's important to kind of use Mac friendly fonts. Otherwise, the look will be very different. But yeah, so this is how I'm doing it. I'm just taking it and I'm adding in that unicar. I went ahead and found these codes. I took much more time than I want to admit, but I found them all, so I was happy. But it's great because you can use them on axes, you can use slicers, you can use them anywhere text can be used in Power BI. So it has a lot of really cool functionality. You can do the same, you can use custom images as icons and stuff if you use the base 64, but anyway. So yes. Let me see if I can scroll out again. And then I'm using my trick here to highlight. I love buttons, so I'm using my trick here to highlight the fill. The fill of buttons can be controlled with conditional formatting. So I'm using that to kind of highlight each of these buttons and stuff like that. So
Zoe?
yes.
Just a question on your funnel chart at the bottom left. when you do the report tooltip, um, is it true that even though there's a vertical scroll bar, you can't really scroll?
Yeah, you can't really scroll. I found, yeah, so that is the annoying part about the tooltips. I did see, I was trying to remember what it was, but there was one place I saw it and you could actually interact with it. I
Hmm.
want to say, I think on the mobile, or it was I think Power BI, like the kiosk kind of version out of the store. I'll have to figure it out and I'll include that in my thing. But I did find one place where I could actually scroll in there and I thought that was kind of neat. Not what I expected, but yes. So generally I limit to like a top 10 or top 5 so it doesn't have that scroll bar because that is annoying because as soon as you see it,
Yes.
you're like I want to go click this and then it goes away.
Yeah.
And so yes, absolutely. For a user experience, that one is a little frustrating. So that's excellent. And sometimes what I like to do, which is frustrating, I need to put in ideas out on the board, is I would like to have my tooltip also be able to drill through to. But I haven't figured quite how to get that. I have to make a duplicate page and make it a drill through. And at that point, I can add more features to it if I wanted to anyway. But I would like to make it dual purpose so that, if you wanted to kind of get into it, you could.
Mhm.
But that's not available yet either. But yeah. So I do try very hard to kind of keep them in that space. Another one is you'll see I have this monthly instead of month, and it's actually continuous access, but aggregated by month. And that's because I format my month as a date, not text, so that it will shrink appropriately instead of trying to scroll off to the right. So it's one of the new techniques I've been using lately. And then I have it format. I have it format. Either I can do it in here. If I go to date here, and I go to my monthly, I also have a month one, but you can actually go into here and do a custom format and then have it show with the 3-letter month and the year. The default one is the full month spelled out and the year, but I like it just a 3 and then the year. It does not do quarters. So I'm very sad. I also need to do an idea about that one too. It says it does quarters. It does not do quarters. So yes. So my quarterly one does not work at the moment. Any other questions? Okay. So this one, is my latest one. I play around a lot with different ways of kind of servicing data. And I have another example on my site of one that kind of highlights the difference between kind of, those UI decisions, that kind of spacing. There's best practices, of course. So, the user experience really drives those UI decisions, but there's also a whole bunch of UI things that are kind of best practice, like spacing and, your font size and contrast and all that kind of stuff. And so I noticed on my reports that I was having a little trouble with that. And so if we go down here, this is one of the ones I had created for the Enterprise DNA Power BI challenges, was my sales dashboard. And I was like, okay, that was pretty good, but it seemed squished. I wasn't quite sure what to focus on. I was having trouble. I'm not quite sure what I was doing wrong. And then I went and got the Numera template to kind of get an idea, kind of, from like an authority on design, and to kind of utilize those things. And so I incorporated what they had as best practices in the same report, the exact same visuals. I didn't change any of the visuals. I think I changed some of the colors, but that's it. But I found out when I gave my charts more breathing room, I had more space to play with. And I added in some cards and stuff like that. But this, I think, and then of course I have my new report and I wanted to kind of bury the other one at sea. But I was like, this is a really great demonstration of kind of those, best practice, like the spacing and making sure things aren't squished and removing clutter and all that kind of stuff. And so it includes like, I always wanted to give context, and I have that in my tooltips. And over here, kind of giving that context again. But this one is a lot easier. I can see where things are. I am not overwhelmed. And it has all the same content. So I made those lines instead of bars, but yeah. So I think this one is a really good example of that as well. So yeah, so that's the other thing I wanted to, I think buttons are really versatile and underutilized. And I think they're really great in reports because they are so much functionality, like having that overlay be a button. And I wanted to quickly show, so this is just a regular button, but if I hit this one, and now I click on this button, you can see all I'm using here is that fill feature. And I have that transparent image that I just put as the fill. And then I can show you, like, if I did go a dark, you can see where I missed here and I missed here on when I was taking out the behind image. So, and then I can, you can have these click anywhere, do what you want kind of idea. And then these ones here, what I like about having, a lot of times when a mirror template especially has like little icons and they have them as images, but it's annoying to change them out. You have to bring them, but delete it, bring it back in, it wrecks your grouping. If you're doing grouping in the selection, it wrecks it. It's always on top. You have to go readjust everything. But here you can set it up once and then you can just change it out. So I can then collect a new image. I don't have any because I'm in my demo profile, so I just killed my image. And then but you can go ahead and just change it out. And then you can also make it so this is where that fill color is. You can go ahead and have it set to a rule. So then I could say if it's my measure is selected as this one, then make it the blue color. Otherwise, just leave it as the default. So it's really easy to set up. My profit margin here is actually coloring on a gradient for profitability as well. So you can kind of get in, and if you get to a store that has kind of a low profitability, it will show that as well. Actually, I think I'm just going to go to a product because that's easier to show that it will go to red when the profitability goes low. So it's at 9%, and now the profitability icon is red. So it's kind of fun stuff with that one. I think the other thing I incorporated in this one is I put in a page because this is being published to the web, and I put it on my LinkedIn, and I wanted people to kind of get an idea of what I did to do all this stuff. And so I went ahead and created a page where I'm highlighting each part and kind of explaining a little bit how I'm doing it. And then eventually I'll create buttons on all this stuff that'll go to like blog posts or YouTube videos or whatever I do on these things that will kind of show in depth how to implement these in your own reports. So keep an eye on that, but I haven't done, I think the only one I have so far is my button highlighting. I did do a blog on that one. And this one is actually a calculation group to build the custom group over here. I didn't segment that data. It's all measure based. But to put on the axis, I actually had to make a calculation group to get it to do that. And that one was, I think, a tip from Mudasar at Enterprise DNA. He did that one. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and has so much use, especially as composite models are not quite there yet. So made it easy to implement and have it recalculate on the fly. But Brent, I think I'm out of content. So I'm going to pass it back to you because I think I've run into anyone, unless anyone has any questions they want to ask me.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So very nice presentation, very nice dashboards. My question is, when you complete a dashboard, in order to increase adoption of the dashboard, I think this is very intuitive, but there's a lot of things on here that maybe a business person may or may not detect in terms of getting the full effect of what all this dashboard can do. So my question is, do you just pretty much rely on just giving it to them, letting them figure out all the nice features and all the things it can do by way of tooltips? Or do you usually provide some sort of documentation or videos or training on, you know, some of the finer points on how to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I don't just throw it at the client like, okay, have fun. No, I absolutely, one of my favorite techniques is, obviously I like to meet with them and run through in person, but sometimes that's not really shareable. So what I like to do is I use a tool called Screen to GIF. Snagit also does it. You can create a GIF. So what I can do is I can record myself playing with the tooltips or running through the report or following that path to action. Like I'll pick a use case and I'll say, okay, so this one's going to be bad. And I know it's bad. So, and I will do that in like a screen, in like a GIF, like just like a minute and a half, just run it through. And then I'll include that with my email. I'm like, hey, this is a report. This is the key functionality. This is how you can do, you know, what you asked for. You know, typically I'll have an idea like, oh, we want to be able to, you know, take this and, you know, find out who is doing this information. And so I can show them how they can go find that information if I've included, especially if I've included like parameters, if it's a what if kind of analysis. I just did one for a client where we were estimating days back. And so I put a parameter on the days back so that they could adjust it from 3 days to 7 days. So if there was no transactional data come in, it would just push the last data forward. And then I can show them how they can go in and see that that total is with the estimate, where the estimate's coming from and how far back the estimate's coming. And so there's a drill through process. And so I made a screen, a GIF of that, and I sent an email, and then they can send that to other parties as well. So try to make that as reusable as possible. If we do a meeting, I do try to make sure it's recorded so that they have that information kept with them. But yeah, adoption is a big piece of Power BI. Every time I do a user, I love doing demos. And so anytime I'm demoing with my client, I try to, you know, throw in little bits of piece of functionality that Power BI does native, just so that they can get the most out of the product as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? But yeah, adoption is such a big piece with Power BI because it has so much functionality that, you know, I always want people to get the most of it. I always end up getting asked for stuff that's like, you know, of course it can't do, but you know, I can get my 75 or 80%.
Yeah, that's very helpful because sometimes I'll turn over a dashboard and I'll meet with a core group at turnover time, but then after it's in production, new users began to use it. And then I sometimes suspect that they're using it, but not to its full extent. That's why I think the recordings and things that you talked about could help with that.
Exactly. Sometimes, you know, that overlay is a new technique that I got from one of my coworkers. They are fantastic. So I stole that from them. Another one that, you know, those GIFs can actually be used to be embedded in a report in a tooltip. I've seen that. I think that was I think someone demoed that in the Power BI user group last year that I was speaking at. And I was like, that is so cool. And so, you know, try to help them as much as possible. But yeah, there's always inevitably going to be like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I was like, yep. Oh, we just took a screenshot of it because I didn't know that I could just export it or stuff like that. So that's really part of that. What are you using this report for is really critical. And trying to get to the end user, not just what the VP say the end user is doing with the report, because those are different opinions. All right, Brent, I'm going to hand back to you now.
All right. I do think we have time. If anyone does have, if you do have a question about how Zoe did any of that, go ahead and chime in if you want to, or put it in the chat. We do have time to answer. Yeah, go right ahead.
Brent, this is Brian. I guess in that context of the video recording and the use of a button, you could take the button and relate that to the URL directly to the video recording? Is that what the concept there?
Yeah, so you can include it so they can have that, where they need it, really kind of making sure that anything about the report that they need to know is accessible from the report itself, not just hidden on some page somewhere
Right.
that they don't know about. Or even if you have a full page or a data catalog or data dictionary and you have information about your reports, a central location, making sure that's accessible in every single report that you publish is really important.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, it's Lisa. I have a question, Zoe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any or established any like standards of how many visuals per tab, metrics, KPIs?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different sites that say, kind of keep it 5, 7. I try to keep it low as well, though then I just go crazy in the tooltips.
Right.
So I do try to, one of the things you'll notice on my reports is I try to put the question as the title. And what that does is not only for the end user, but it's also for me, because then I have to think about what question is this answering. And if I have two visuals that are really answering a same question or a similar question, then I'm like, do I actually need both these visuals? I probably don't. I could probably get rid of one. And so it's a kind of a way for me to pare that down. But yeah, you should definitely, I've seen some where they do like a Fibonacci kind of sequence almost, where they have one big and then two half, and then maybe, kind of having them smaller and smaller, giving them kind of that hierarchy and precedence. But yeah, I think that, so the Maven Toys ones has more than I was actually going for, but then I tried to kind of group them in that way to kind of enable me to squeeze a little bit more in there, but not have it be kind of overwhelming and still be able to kind of direct the user to kind of which concepts we're talking about in each part. So there's, the other one is proximity. So making sure if you do have kind of a lot of different visuals, make sure, so I try to keep them, the ones that are related to each other next to each other, and the ones that are kind of maybe a little, not directly related, just a little bit further away, so that they can have it in. But yeah, you definitely don't want to put a lot of stuff on the reports, even shapes. So one of the reasons it slows down my reports a little bit is there's a lot of shapes. They have no data, nothing, but they will slow down your report. So for performance side as well, you definitely want to make sure you're not overloading it. And just for, cognitive, they call it cognitive load, I think is the term, and that it's about 5. I think 5 to 7 is I think what I've seen most of. But yeah, just don't put 20 on there.
Okay, thank you. I'm starting the documentation process to create standards with my company.
Yeah, so you want to check out.
I want the world on one tab,
Yes.
and I'm trying to. It gets so cluttered, but yeah. So this way, I can have this documentation that, hey, Microsoft is suggesting this, and this is what we should go for.
So there are also some really good ones. I think it's Stephanie Evergreen has a data visualization book and a website, and then the storytelling with data. They also talk about that. There's a lot of really great, those kind of authoritative, kind of published places where it kind of goes into those best practices and why that is an important thing, because we just can't comprehend if we have so many things on one page. Now,
Right.
if you are, there's some, people who are good at that, like data, like me, you can put probably 20 on there, I'll be fine. It'll take me a minute and I have time to spend looking at it. So really about that user as well. So if they're okay with it, go ahead, but a lot of times people are a bit overwhelmed if they're not quite so used to it.
Right. Can you provide those links to
Yes.
Stephanie Evergreen? And thank you so much.
Yeah, let me pop those in the chat.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Zoe. And thank
Yes,
you to, yeah, please go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment on that. Oftentimes when I'm developing dashboards, I mean, it's always the case that the user wants to see way too much on one screen or wants to just overpopulate it. And the argument or the commentary I usually give them is, I think the more you put on a page, in my opinion, the less effective it becomes. It's just like if you're looking at your dashboard in your car, if you're overwhelmed with so many dials and gauges and things like that, you actually do yourself a disservice in communicating the information with all the clutter. And so just by definition, the dashboard is supposed to reveal the most important key points and not every bit of detail. And so oftentimes I find myself having to, have that discussion with people, and because they're used to coming from an environment where they have either paginated reports where they're like overwhelmed with all this kind of detail. Then they go into this dashboard environment and they think, I got to have all this detail. And I say, no, you start at the highest level and just let it direct you downward if you need to get into the detail, but don't flood your your dashboard with all these different visualizations, because you actually lose the thing that you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly, I agree. And that's what has driven me to this point, or my organization to this point, because end users are wanting to have everything on their dashboard instead of maybe higher level KPIs and then drilling down. So yes, setting these standards, that way they know going into it, here's our standards, here's what you can choose from, and here's what's getting that across the board before the initial requirements gathering process and starting that whole process.
Yeah, so Lisa, you're developing a center of excellence in your company there, which is a fantastic
Good.
it's a fantastic thing to do, especially and to provide that kind of guidance, and say, hey, this is great, but we should probably keep it down to the little, this is, having those, kind of UX, UI kind of best practices, hey, don't put 20 visuals on here, keep the, down this number. Also, Parry has personalized visuals for self-service too. So you can kind of modify them in the fly. And then, there's a bunch of techniques to kind of reuse the same visual in different ways without having to have it duplicated multiple times.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also thanks for, I see Luke adding some things into the chat here. About 7 ±2 items in their mind at a time. So that's good input there.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to add to the point about the car dashboard. I was actually looking at my car dashboard. Also on Instagram, I tagged the tag dashboard to get reports ideas. And anyway, I see a lot of car dashboards now. But I was looking at it and I was like, well, this is actually a fantastic idea, because really you do only have a few seconds to kind of keep an eye, and you can't sit there and at that time, how much time do you have to spend on the report, right? You don't want to spend 3 minutes trying to figure out what your car is doing while you're driving down a highway at 60 miles per hour. And so one of the things I noticed is you have the check engine light, you have the oil light, but they're all, when they're going fine, you don't see them because they're kind of faded in, they're not lit up, they're not green, they're just not visible. Whereas I think that's a really good point when people put the red and green on everything, is really you should fade out the green and just have that red highlight, because that's what you care about. Maybe I've seen reports where they toggle it so you can say good, bad, and then it could highlight the good or highlight the bad, but not both at the same time, because it kind of washes it out.
Great point.
Nice.
Yep.
And and then Luke mentioned, which is red and green is also not very colorblind friendly. So
True.
just to give you a pause when you're out driving on the road anywhere, that about 6% of males can't determine red from green. So that probably explains some things too. So
My father is one of them.
yeah.
But also on that point, there is a colorblind friendly theme in Power BI as well. Like one of the default themes is colorblind friendly.
Right. Great. And so really, I wanted to also say thank you. Of course, thank you, Zoe, for this effort that you put into the presentation, always bringing a lot of great ideas for us. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who asked a question. It takes some courage to kind of unmute and jump out there. And so thank you for putting it out there. And if you have more questions, you can definitely find Zoe on her blog. In the future, we'll all be on the same community website, so you could send us a message there, or on our existing site that we're still on for this month. And lots of ways to get in touch with Zoe to ask questions. So yeah. So the one thing I had on my list to mention before wrapping up the meeting today is I also happened to hear about a Power BI job opportunity. It's not with me. It's with a local company. If anyone knows someone who is looking for a Power BI developer role, please let me know, and I'll pass that along to the right person. So it happens to be with someone I'm related to. So I can't take it, you know. Yeah. All right. With that, thank you all for being here, and we will see you June the 17th, third week in June, same time, same channel. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
Brent.
guys. Great presentation.